Have you ever experienced a God wink? You know, the kind of experience you know without a shadow of a doubt that God stepped in and gave you a big old wink from heaven. I'm your host, Cindy Spar, broadcasting from Office Evolution in Troy, Michigan. I am the founder of My Collective Network and My Christian Business Network, two amazing business networking organizations. I am a firm believer that there is power in sharing God wink stories. Think of it as a way for people to shine their light on Jesus, one wink at a time. In Matthew 5:14, it says, "You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden. Nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a stand, and it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven." All right, everyone. So thank you so much for tuning in to the God Wink podcast today. I am seriously excited today for you guys to hear such an incredible story. I got to hear it very recently on my hour-long walk. This story was so good. I was outside and gave this individual a call and had an opportunity to hear how extremely vast God had worked in her life at such a young age in just such a miraculous way. It's humbling to be able to have her on here today. This is actually exciting too, because it's the first time she's been on a podcast, people. So I encouraged her, and she took a leap of faith to pop on with us and share her story. So without further ado, I just want to introduce Cindy. Yes, that's Cindy. Her name is Cindy. Cindy Kupinski. So, Cindy, welcome onto the God Wink podcast.
Oh, Cindy, thank you so much for having me. I am so excited. I know the other day I so enjoyed our talk on, for an hour.
Yes.
It was nice.
Felt like 30 minutes.
It did. Felt like 20. It's funny. Speaking, people are like, oh, it's like, what am I going to say for 20 minutes and end up talking for an hour? But seriously, Cindy, thank you so much for inviting me. I am truly honored. You made me feel so comfortable and relaxed. And just to say a little bit about myself, I am happily married to my third husband. A lot of brokenness. But I have 3 boys. My husband has 3 girls. So we are the Brady Bunch in reverse.
Oh, I love it.
I do. We got 6 amazing grandkids. I mean, God has so blessed us so much, and it's just amazing how much God has turned all the nasty, ugly stuff in my life and when I was little to just amazing. There's really, truly, light at the end of the tunnel. So thank you so much for having me, my dear.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was just astonished, too, about all the work that you've done. I was asking, what do you do for a living? That's something commonly I'll ask people, to share not only their personal story, but what do you do, all day? And share with them a little bit about your husband and how he has his space and how you have your space as well.
Yeah, that is truly an amazing story. My husband and I, about a year ago, we just randomly had this building came up on Facebook. He just tagged it up in a tab. And a couple of days later, just out of the blue, we had an offer for our building. Yeah, I didn't share that with you, that we had an offer on our building, and we took a look at it. Downstairs in this building, it's an 8-bay. It's my husband's dream facility. We've worked so hard. He's been in business almost 25 years. And then upstairs is my place, which is 2 floors, which I can have my organization, Healing Choices. It's a 3-bedroom apartment, so women can come. We can talk and have coffee, relax. And then there's 2 additional spaces for my offices and women to stay if they need a couple of night emergency stayed until they can be placed. So it's just amazing that we can work downstairs and then go upstairs. And
you guys have your own safe space to where he says, hey, stay in your zone.
Oh, yeah. All 10. Yeah. I hear the guys. I'll be downstairs working. And then all of a sudden the guys are like, get upstairs. Go to work. And I'm like, okay, back to work.
That was so good. Well, you said mentioned something about Healing Choices, which is your nonprofit. Tell us about what happened to you that caused you to create such a wonderful nonprofit.
Well, when I was a kid, very, very little, both my mom and dad, they were a part of a satanic occult. My dad would go ahead and, abuse me, torture me, sacrifice me at night. And then the next day, my mom, she was mentally ill, and she would go ahead, beat me, often put me in the hospital. It was just torture from night and day. I didn't feel safe at all. The odd part about it is the church that we went to on Sunday was actually the church where all the satanic happened and all this horrible abuse happened. But my mom, in her sick way, she kept always saying to pray to Jesus. Pray to Jesus when all these horrible things happened to me. I just remember praying to Jesus. And I remember one time in particular, I was 4 years old, on my front lawn, singing to this tree, singing to Jesus, this little light of mine, not wanting other people to hurt as much as I was hurting, just to think about it, 4 years old, just singing to this tree, to Jesus. And after that, my mom just took me in the house and did unthinkable things to me. But through growing up and what have you, I always had this relationship with God. He's the only thing that I had. He was my strength. He was just kept me from going from day to day. I've always wanted to hurt myself, and I wanted to give up. And I remember being a teenager, walking in the middle of the street, just wanting cars to hit me because I was just in so much pain.
Oh my gosh, I could not imagine. And I remember you telling me one time that I was like, how do you go through something like that and not feel like, almost like, where are you, God? Like, how could you, and there's a lot of hurt people listening, I'm sure that you were like, if God really exists, why in the world would he allow that to happen to me? And you were telling me all along, I said, when did you find the Lord? And when you said, my whole life. Like I saw him my whole life. I felt him. I would pray to him. And that just like astounded me. I think you even said, no one's ever asked me that question.
No, they didn't. They didn't. No one's ever asked me that. I'm like,
But it makes me think, like, how many times do we go through things and we say to God, where are you? Now I start to wonder, do you even hear me? Are you even real? Because I'm going through all these things, yet, you're nowhere to be found. But hearing your story from when you're a kid to how you now know and you have experienced the pain and how God turned those ashes, right, into beauty is so powerful. Because how are you going to speak into people's lives that were abused if you didn't go through it? And it probably sounds twisted that, God let you go through it so you could help other people. But God works in mysterious ways, right?
oh, yeah, absolutely. Because my whole life, as much as I wanted to help people and all the trauma and everything, and, when God told me that's like one day I was going to write a book to help people, I'm like, oh, okay, God. I'm like, sure, no problem. You chose me. And there were situations, and it's like I've been able to talk to people and share my story. And I'm like, thanks, God. Thanks, God. Sorry to say, but I'm like, thanks, God. Thanks for choosing me. God, why did you choose me? And then this horrible thing happened, and that horrible thing. I'm like, God, okay, I'm doing everything right, and all these bad things are happening. But through all that, I had God.
Mm.
And when things got bad and things got really, really bad, the only person that I had was God. And then through, years of healing, through counseling, it got to the point that, and I astounded myself, that I was actually thanking God. And I'm like, God, you thought that I can handle all this? That one day I'm going to be able to tell my story and people just give them strength and encouragement to say, yeah, there was a God. Because trust me, there were so many days I didn't think there was a God, and I was mad at God, and I was angry at God, but he showed up every single time. I've never gone to drugs. I've never gone to alcohol. I've never been hospitalized. I've never cut myself. It wasn't my strength. It was God's strength.
Mm-hmm.
It was all God's strength. Just for me to conceive kids and to have kids from all the abuse, that was just a miracle act of God.
Yeah.
And now I thank God every day. It's like, God, you chose me. You think that I can handle it? I'm just this kid from Detroit.
That's the ones that he uses.
Yeah.
We're like the next edition, right, of the Bible stories. We look at Bible stories and think like, oh, it's only back then. But I'd love to see a book of what we go through, right, and how God shows up. He uses the people that you would never think. You'd think, oh, they're not worthy, or they've done this, and He's like, that's perfect. That's what I want to use. Well, you had shared with me today about an instance that happened where you came in touch with a specific gentleman that was going to help you with your nonprofit. He was like some style of an attorney. Was that right? That walked into or came into the auto shop?
Yeah, for my nonprofit. For years I've been trying to, get the nonprofit, my 501c3, and I know with the sensitivity of everything that was going on that, I needed the right person.
Yeah.
So I kept praying for God. I'm like, okay, God, I need somebody. Just, when I'm going into talking to people, just to make sure that that they feel comfortable with me, that, that they know everything is done right.
Yeah.
And so my husband and I, we own an auto repair shop, and one day this attorney came in with the police, and I'm like, okay, what the heck is going on? Well, they were coming to repo one of my customers' cars. And I'm like, no, what are you talking about? It was a hot rod. We deal with hot rods. And this gentleman, this attorney, he was just so nice and so sweet and so calm, and just going back and forth trying to contact our customer, with the police trying to contact him. My husband was talking to him. I was talking to him. He just turned up to be just this wonderful, nicest guy. And my husband, he goes, nope, he's the one who's going to be doing our nonprofit. And I'm like, excuse me? So I ended up asking him, and just back and forth with the phone calls, it just turned out to be that he had a story, that he has a story, and this wonderful, amazing story that he shared with me. So he was on both sides of the fence, that how he was abused, and then when, later on he was with somebody to help him, so we understood 100% the meat and potatoes of the whole nonprofit. We ended up, it was a beautiful story. The one day, my girlfriend at church, she said that she was going to be the third board member that we needed, and just going back and forth and praying for months and months and months that I needed the right person. She said yes. I was so excited. I ran outside, and there was a double rainbow.
Beautiful.
There was a double rainbow.
You got some confirmation.
I'm like, thank you, Jesus, absolutely. And then we went ahead and called the attorney, let him know we met. And then normally getting a nonprofit, it takes months. It takes 6 to 8 months to get your 501c3, and I literally got it in weeks.
Off of a random attorney coming in.
Random attorney.
Regarding a hot rod.
Yeah. A hot rod. Uh-huh. It was just, I'm like, it's just amazing how people literally, the more that I stand still and literally take my hands off of everything, I'm like, okay, God, if this is your will, if this is really what you want me to do, I've gone through all this trauma, all this abuse, all this heartache. If you want to use me to glorify you, because it's not my story, it's God's story. He just chose me.
Yeah.
He just figured way before I was born that, and it's kind of funny, but my counselor, he said it was that stubborn little bullheadedness that I had. This is this little girl that just loved God, that never got rid of my childhood faith. All these years later, just that seed that was planted, that childlike faith, God and I, we had this relationship.
That's how it is.
And that here it is, all these years later, he's just bringing all these people. The building is God's building, and it's God's ministry, and it's God's book. He just chose me. He just thinks
you're
that
a vessel.
I'm capable. Yes, absolutely. That if I can go through all this craziness, and you literally can see the light at the end of the tunnel, and it's all through God, because there's no way I could have done it on myself. There's no way that any of this would have happened without God.
No. And I think of too, listener, she shared something with me that was a specific date, October 1st, when she saw the double rainbow. But that was where God turned it for glory, right, on that day where he's like, wink, wink, here comes your third member, right? But tell them what was also October 1st.
Well, October 1st is actually the worst day of the year for me. Through going through counseling, and the abuse was so bad my whole life, I just blacked out all my memories. I knew what my mom did to me. I knew that my mom beat me up. She put me in the hospital. My mother sexually abused me, but I thought that my father was the hero. Well, unfortunately, I was 35, age appropriate, when I started seeing visions of burning crosses, my dad's headboard, all these other things. And the end of September, I was getting headaches, all these panic attacks. I had no idea what was going on. Well, come to find out that October 1st, which is unfortunately the height of demonic, because it's Halloween and what have you, is also that it's my dad's birthday. Well, I hated my dad's birthday. Well, dad's birthday and everybody else's birthday and anniversary, it was, excuse me, I still get a little choking up about it, but that's when my dad used to sacrifice me the most. So October 1st was the worst day of the year. I knew what was coming up. My friends and family, they all knew October 1st was the worst day of the year. It was horrible, horrible, horrible. And I dreaded it for years. My poor husband, he always anticipated, it's like, okay, here we are, September, one more week to go. And God in his glory, he honored me, that 4-year-old little girl from all them years back, to start this nonprofit, to get the okay on October 1st. Just the peace that I had that day, and just to go outside and see not only one rainbow, but 2 rainbows. Everybody seen it. It was the most beautiful thing. You could see it from end to end. And I looked outside and I'm like, praise God. And everybody's like, Cindy, what? I'm like, that's my rainbow. That's my double rainbow. She said, yes. And it's October 1st.
Oh, what a
like,
change.
I'm like, God, he honored that day. So now for the rest of my life, October 1st will be the best day of the year.
Oh, I love that.
It's like,
I'm going to always think about you on October 1st. Well, I want to make sure that you share with everyone your heart and soul that got put into publication. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about your publication?
Oh, my book?
Yeah.
Well, my book, and it's all God, too, because, one day I was leaving counseling, and just felt it was a really bad day in counseling, just trying to process everything. I'm going through the bank, just making a deposit through the drive-thru. God's like, you're going to write a book? I'm like, what do you mean I'm going to write a book? He's like, yeah, you're going to write a book. Well, anyways, God won. I fought him. But when I was going through counseling and when I was getting all my memories, there was nobody there to understand. There were no support groups out there that would really understand. There was no literature. I mean, I Googled everything. I looked at everywhere. The books out there that had anything to do with anything about sexual abuse. This was so tacky. Mm-hmm. It was just like, okay, I don't even want to open up this book or read anything, let alone think about all this. And that's when I wrote the book, the name of it is The Light Through My Eyes. Mm. And it just tells my story of what I've overcome with, how God was there from the time that I was little, and try to understand. I talk to the reader. I physically, talk to the reader and just let them know that they're loved and they're cherished. And this is why, so many women, unfortunately, they stay in abusive relationships and they don't know how to get out. Mm-hmm. My first husband, he was extremely abusive. He was just like my mom, finally got out of there. My second ex-husband, he was my dad, unfortunately. I mean, he was so abusive to the point that me and my boys, we had to go into hiding because the detective, he thought he was going to kill me. So me and my boys were in hiding, and he ended up getting out, and it was just horrible, horrible. And I explained that all in my book, but it's like, why I stayed. It's like so many women. It's like because there was a part of them that, there was the good guy. He is the father of my children. He was on my wedding day that I had my dream. This little girl that was in so much pain for so many years finally has this fairy tale wedding that all of us just want. I got married in this big, beautiful church, and even though I knew I should have never married him, all the red, flags were there, but I was so broken, and I was so hurt. To me, the perception of love was beatings, raped, and tortured. And unfortunately, me and so many other people, that's what they're gravitated to because it's all that they know.
Yeah.
And so I want to, in the book, explain why I've stayed and why it was so hard to get out. And just like with the men, nobody's born mean, nobody's born evil. Even like my own father, as much as a monster he wasn't more mean, but it was a cycle. He came from a alcoholic family, and he was abused. And my mother, she stayed. She tried to get out, but she was abandoned from her mom when she was an infant.
Wow.
Dad was in the military. Her grandmother raised her, and then it was just that cycle. And I just thank God that with him and through him that I was really able to break that dysfunctional cycle, that my kids are living normal, healthy lives, that I made a difference. I broke the demonic cycle. And I share all that, in my book that God does matter. And that, with God, anything that's possible. And I understand the bad days, and I know the pain, and I know the hurt, and now I look back, it's like God allowed so many horrible, horrible, horrible things to happen in my life, but he was there to get me through it. So, when I talk to so many men and women about different situations, I can honestly say, I get it. I've been there. I've done that. I feel your pain. I feel your hurt. I feel what you're going through, and just to give you a hug and say, it's going to be okay. And
sometimes people just need a hug, right?
Yeah.
Or someone to listen.
Yeah.
We've talked about that. So the power of just letting them talk, right?
Yeah.
You need an ear. Well, I wanted to ask you, this will be kind of the closing pieces here, is first off, how can people get their hands on your book?
Okay, well, the book, you can get it on Amazon, and then obviously I have in my organization.
Okay.
So I have them there, and it's on Amazon.
Awesome. And how do people connect with you, whether it's even through the ministry, directly? Give us all the things on how they can best connect with you.
Well, right now we're just baby startup. So right now all the information's on Facebook at Healing Choices.
Perfect. So if there was one key takeaway that you have for our listeners today, based on what you've went through, what do you want to tell them? What is God pulling you to tell them?
The biggest thing that keeps going through is that you have to love yourself enough to get better. That you are God's child and he loves you. You are his son, you are his daughter, and he loves you. You might not have had the best mom in the world, the best dad in the world, but he is your father and he loves you so unconditionally that you are loved and you are and you do matter.
Oh, amen. It's so beautiful to know we have a God that truly cares, that hears every single prayer, and doesn't even say in the Bible that he catches every single tear and he stores it, right? Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Cindy. And guys, that's Cindy Kupinski. And this is Cindy Spar, Cyndeee, coming to you from the God Wink podcast. One thing I want to tell our listeners is we want to know how to be praying for you. So what we did is we put a link within the podcast notes to capture prayers because we all know there is such power in prayer, and we want to be here to support you. So please take a look there. And we're also going to have all of the links to connect, to order Cindy's book. So feel free to take a look at those notes. And guys, we would still love to hear more of what God's doing in your lives. So if you've got a God Wink story that you know the world needs to hear, or you know what, maybe you think, well, I got something, that God did in my life, but I just don't know if it's worthy of being on a podcast. I want you to go against those thoughts. Too many times the devil comes to steal and destroy, right? And he might tell you, your testimony's not that big of a deal, but it is. And he's going to keep telling you that so that you'll stay silent and don't listen to that voice. Do not listen to that voice, because there is somebody listening to this podcast that needs to hear your testimony. So thanks, guys, for tuning in. Looking forward to connecting with you on the next God Wink podcast. I want to give a big thank you to Office Evolution Troy for providing their podcast studio for us this afternoon to record. If you have any questions or you would like to book your own time in their podcast studio, give them a call at 586-788-9966. If today's God Wink story really hit home with you, we would love to hear about it through the God Wink community on Facebook. If you know of someone that needs to hear today's God Wink story, show them some love and tag them on the God Wink podcast. You never know how a God Wink story might change their day around for the better. If you or someone you know has a God Wink story that the world needs to hear, we want to hear it. Simply click the link within the podcast notes to send in your God Wink story. Until next time, remember, God's got you. Wink, wink.